First cup of ayahuasca style mushroom tea. Down packed. So I took the tea. I had the lights low to not interfere, because I think that's a common thread I found with ayahuasca ceremonies and Eleusis. There's something around, and the Greeks, and something around the darkness. In the darkness you can look inward. So I just took that for face value and tried it out. It seemed to work in transporting me to the spirit realm, let's say. So, and the major thing for intent, for sharpening, like allowing my mind to help me pierce that world, was what is that idea? If you die before you die, then when you die you won't die. The whole phoenix idea, the whole dead wood in the forest idea, the whole idea of being a forest, accumulating dead wood. And if you, like, an ego is like this forest, I guess, and you could say like there's certain parts of the ego at which are holding you back, that need to be reborn, that need to be burned down, let's say, in the forest, so that it doesn't accumulate dead wood and then get so hot that it burns the whole forest, and then you can't grow anything there because it's a dead wood forest. That's the Egyptian idea, I think, too, of the feather in the heart on the balance scale, that if you can acquire this sort of, it seems like if you go through a process of a life where you're constantly, let's say, burning off the dead wood in the forest, or letting the parts of you that need to die, so that the new parts of you can be, come into existence. And it seems like if you let that happen, then you can acquire an ego that's as light as a feather. And if you do that, then you basically are granted access to the afterlife. I can't say for sure. I haven't been, I don't think. But it seems like that's the whole Egyptian thing, and that's the whole through line through all of this, all these ceremonies and all these of death. It's, to lighten your ego so you can make it to the afterlife. Even though I'm not necessarily a religious person, I think every religious tradition has a lot to offer in that sense of teaching one how to become someone who's become the better version of yourself. And for that you have to constantly die, let those weaker parts of you die that are self-sabotaging and all of that. So I'm not a psychologist, but seems like all of that would make good sense. So with that said, going into this trip, it was a deep trip. It was extremely deep, and I felt like I was in there for thousands of years. And I've been everywhere, and I kind of don't do this in a linear progression. It's just like, but that's kind of how I storytell, I guess. With that being said, it was the best thing that's ever happened to me. And it's really crystallized my path for wanting that for myself and others, wanting people to understand, as well as me to understand, the importance of the phoenix, of death and rebirth. And I think that's literally the guide through these trips, is death and rebirth. And the closer you can get to that, then I think that's when you can get, this sounds, I get how this could sound like egotistical, but I feel like that's at that point is when you can get the most out of the trips. Is when you're aimed at that. When you're aimed at death and rebirth. You just won't fight it. And so I think that's the problem. Like, all of the trips that I've had that have been really, 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 really useful have been trips to hell. And all I see is people complaining about trips to hell. And I feel like that's where all the growth is. So I don't know if that's me. I don't understand. But I guess I don't understand. I haven't had every experience, so I can't. I've had about maybe 10 trips, 10 psilocybin trips, maybe 2 acid trips. At this point, I've taken a 5.3, 4.5. I took a 3.5. I took a, I've taken variations under 3, but 5.3 was like the most I've taken. And I wasn't even, I wasn't even sharp enough intent-wise, I feel like, that early to get this as deep as I did on a 3.5 in that T. And I think it's partially because it was in T form, maybe partially has to do with the shrooms themselves, but I think it's mainly to do with intent and getting that idea crystallized in death and rebirth. And if you can go in there like that, when you go into hell, it's sending you somewhere so you can build the gratitude. Let's say for me, in not having self-love, it's like you're ungrateful. You have all these things. Not material things, but you have fucking air conditioner, roofs. We're not starving. We're not in the gulag. We're not, it hasn't always been daisies. Things are kind of great right now, even though we complain, at ever increasing rate, because it's like you have all this extra energy. You have to do something. Start complaining, I guess. But I guess it's warranted at some degree, but what the fuck am I ever getting at? It was a deep trip. Very deep. And I think the reason I was able to get there is because I was getting into psychology and my own psychology, trying to find some way to improve. That was literally my main goal. I was treating it with the most respect and finding a way to improve, And so, like, even from the first trip, I feel like I improved. Maybe even if it was a little bit, that perception it added was enough to help me get to a next step and a next step. And the perception you can gain from it seems to be directly correlated to the intent you go in with. If you don't want to lose control, if you think you're fine the way you are, or those parts of you that think they're fine the way they are, it's going to be a fight. It's going to give you a headache. You're not going to want to let that part of your ego go. But that's probably the part that needs to go. So it's like, but it's not that easy. It's just not that easy. I get it. It's not that easy.